Hey guys, good to have you here. So tonight in Minecraft I'm working on a mob farm. Big project, gonna take a while, so this is actually perfect timing, because today's story is a series. This is part 1. Part 2 drops tomorrow. Let's get into it. I'm a trucker on a highway that doesn't exist. You should never pick up hitchhikers. Absolutely under no circumstances may you ever pick up a hitchhiker. It's common for unfamiliar persons to approach truck drivers on Route 333 asking for a lift. It does not matter who the person in question may be. It does not matter if they are a nursing mother with a newborn child or a lost preteen in great distress. Never, for any reason, under any conditions, may you provide one of said persons with requested rides. You won't survive if you do. Why are you doing this? That was the thing my girlfriend of 3 years asked me repeatedly in the days leading up to my departure. The start day for my new trucking gig drew closer. I'd be moving to a totally different state. I did just graduate. I do need a job. Trucking has nothing to do with your major. Stay here. To be fair, most jobs have nothing to do with English. That's sort of the issue. Day after day though, Myra continued to ask why I was doing this. I could have gone with the easy answer, the money, which really had been why I'd signed my contract in the first place. But the closer my start date got, the more I was sure that wasn't the whole reason I was leaving. How did I put into words this growing feeling inside me? That I couldn't stay, that I wasn't happy there, or anywhere really, and how it was slowly suffocating me. And while it wasn't her fault, she also wasn't the solution, as much as she wished she could be, so I had to go. But yeah, I'm fairly sure what I actually said was just money. You can still call me, she said the night before my flight. We'll talk every day while you're driving, yeah? I don't know. I think probably not. There's a whole section in the employee handbook about how I can only use the radio. So, they won't know. I remembered the bloodied corpse of the other interviewee skewered to his hood during my interview. I remembered the scratch of my own face pressed to the pavement as things skittered around my rig. How could I explain why I had to follow the phone rule too? I stayed silent. Her voice got soft. We're breaking up, aren't we? I think we are. Instead of slapping me, she hugged me, kissed me on the cheek, and left. At the door she paused. Goodbye, Brendan. In the job preparation packet, my new trucking company was very clear on one thing. Read the employee handbook. So I did what anybody would do. I skimmed it. I'm sure at this point some of you are clucking your tongues disapprovingly. Really, Brendan? One dead body wasn't enough? Didn't you already accidentally break a rule last time? But let me ask you this. What was the last job you worked where you read the entire employee handbook back to front? That's what I thought. The parts I did read had some weird stuff in them. There was your typical information, but also some odder things. Sections on what to do if the moon forgot to show up on a night it was supposed to. Explanations on which gas stations were normal and which ones had rules to obey, like don't stare anybody in the eyes, not even if they're speaking directly at you. There was a whole page on which FM radio stations were safe and which might put you into a trance for hours or make you crave non-food substances. Never speed, read a sentence in section 5A. If you do, it may draw the attention of the highway patrol. They are not highway patrol. They will not give you a ticket. You do not want to find out what they will give you as punishment instead. Basically, I was around 90 to 95% sure I would die a morbidly gruesome death, my first real time on Route 333. More of a passing interest than an actual fear, which probably just demonstrates how damaged my psyche was. I'm happy to report, however, my first haul went off without a hitch. The first section was redwood groves, followed by hours of desert pockmarked with run-down towns, and finally some twisting mountain canyons. I crashed in the sleeper after delivering my haul at an abandoned building, which is where they told me to leave it. My truck stopped for 1 minute 47 seconds at the usual spot, but there was no additional visit from the things in the forest. Back at the truck yard, I dangled my keys in front of Randall, my dispatcher. He whistled. 14 hours there and back. That is simply unheard of. Can I ask you what I actually delivered? No. No, you may not. He smiled cheerily and plucked the keys from me. I was still having a hard time figuring Randall out. Either he was a passive-aggressive jerk, or he simply had an odd sense of humour. Either way, he hadn't seemed too concerned when the other man in my interview had gotten savagely murdered, so that probably tipped the scales towards jerk. My next few weeks went almost equally smooth. Randall and the other dispatchers started sending me on longer and longer trips down Route 333. They would last 3, sometimes 4 days at a time. I didn't mind, I was getting massive amounts of overtime, but I did get the odd sense the dispatchers were almost excited about the fact I was going so far. I knew there was a part in the employee handbook about how the road would expand over time. A drive that took me 4 hours might take another driver 8 or more. Eventually there would be a breaking point, a rapid expansion where a section of the road that took you minutes would now take weeks. From tidbits of conversations with other drivers, I got the impression there were truckers who hadn't quit in time, who'd been stuck on Route 333 for years, trying to get back. Frankly, most days I didn't care much. For the first time in years, my racing thoughts were finally slowing. My chronic overthinking was fading away to a sense of pleasant numbness. Before I'd started trucking, I'd been worried the loneliness would get to me. Now, the only thing I worried about anymore was how entirely fine I was being this alone. I'd stopped for fuel at a Petro speed when I heard it. Something nagged the recesses of my mind, a thin thread yanking and yanking. Finally, I twisted to see who belonged to the voice across the parking lot. I'd gaped. It was Myra, my ex-girlfriend, talking animatedly with one of the Petro speed workers. "What do you mean there's no mechanics in the area?" Myra jabbed a finger at her car. "How am I supposed to keep driving in that thing?" "I'm sorry, ma'am, but the nearest town is hours away. You'll have to call a towing company." "I don't want to call a towing company. I want to find somebody here." "Myra?" I asked. She whirled, looking as if she was going to snap at me too, then realised who I was. Her hands flew to her mouth, then she sprinted at me and threw herself in my arms. I laughed. "This is insane. What are you doing here?" "Looking for you. Looking for—" "Myra, you haven't even called me." "Yes, I did." "I've called a dozen times the last few days and you never picked up. I got worried. I wanted to see you. I wouldn't have picked up. I didn't even bring my phone anymore to avoid the temptation of using it. Something like this, her somehow tracking me down to the middle of nowhere, felt exactly like the sort of impulsive thing Myra would do. Entirely insane, but the exact reason I fell in love with her. "Amazing luck," she said. "If my car hadn't died, I wouldn't have stopped here. Can I ride with you?" We talked for hours. It was just like before. We laughed and sang along to the limited country songs we knew at ear-shattering volumes. After a few hours, she grabbed my hand, and I didn't stop her. I'd thought I was fine with the loneliness, but having her here physically with me, I knew I'd minded more than I let myself believe. "I never thought you'd want to talk with me again," I told her. At first, I didn't. She stroked my knuckle with her thumb. "I don't think I'll ever stop loving you." I felt amazing. I glowed the whole evening, all up until we stopped at a rest stop for the night and she slipped into the building for the bathroom. "Everything's good," I reported on my handheld radio as part of my nightly check-in. "You sound chipper," Randall said. Crazy story, actually. I told him about running into Myra, about how I was giving her a lift back to civilization and how good it was to see her. He went quiet. "You know you aren't supposed to pick up hitchhikers," he said. I didn't. She's not a hitchhiker. I know her. "Did she ask you for a ride?" "No, I offered her a ride. But I hadn't, had I? I would have, but she'd gotten to asking first." A slow, deadly chill spread up my back. "Who are you talking to?" Myra climbed into the cab in pajamas. "Nobody." Nobody at all. She fell asleep instantly, cuddled up next to me. This was Myra of all people. I knew her. She wasn't a stranger. I hadn't broken any rules. Why wasn't I allowed to just be happy for once? I forced myself to close my eyes, steady my breaths, and drift off to sleep. I woke up hours later. It was a gradual wake up. Something wet was on my face. My eyes didn't snap open. Instead, for some inexplicable reason, I cracked them open just a fraction, thin enough they still appeared closed. She was staring at me. In the early morning light, Myra watched me with an enormous grin across her face, fully awake. She leaned in and ran her tongue from my chin up to my forehead. "I love you," she whispered. "Do you need the bathroom?" I asked hours later. We were stopped at a rest stop a mere hour or two from the end of Route 333. The last few hours the conversation had been tense. She hadn't wanted to get out to stretch her legs once. "I'm good. You haven't gone all day. You didn't go yesterday either." She giggled, like I'd told some joke. She reached out to my face and ran a single sharpened nail along my cheek. It's almost like you want to get rid of me. I swallowed and pretended to ignore the drip of blood from my chin. Of course not. I took the keys with me when I went to fill up the tank. She pressed her face up against the glass the whole time, smiling down at me, waving incessantly. When I climbed back in, she giggled. "Don't take so long. I missed you." We drove. She became increasingly cuddly. Her grip when she held my hand was tight. Too tight. There would be bruises tomorrow. She started leaning across the center divide to rake her teeth against my neck. "Stop," I said. "No." I stopped 3 more times to stretch my legs. "You should too," I said each time, but she refused. She wouldn't leave. "Stop it," she growled the 4th time we stopped. Her face distorted into a grotesque mask, then softened back into a smile. "I'll miss you, Myra." I took a breath. "There's actually something I need to ask you." "Yes?" "It's not something I can ask you in a truck, though." Her face scrunched in annoyance. Her breath grew harsh and gravelly. "These last 2 days have been amazing," I said. "They've made me realize how much I missed you and need to be with you. The thing I need to ask you, I have to kneel for it." A soft smile tugged at her lips. Finally, she relented. She followed me from the truck. As we walked to a clearing in the forest, her steps grew more erratic and random, more excited. The skin on her face looked less smooth and more like plastic, like something designed in a factory. "Close your eyes," I whispered, and sunk my hand into my pocket showingly. She did. Then I bolted for the truck. It was seconds before she realized what was happening, and even longer before she started after me. By the time the not Myra, reached me, the doors were already locked. I was already rolling away. Her face was something entirely inhuman. Her eyes dripped like melted wax from her empty sockets, and her hair peeled off in clumps. "No," she screeched. "I love you. Don't leave me." But I did, for the 2nd time. When I returned to the truck yard, I said nothing of what had happened. Randall didn't either, though he seemed visibly surprised to see me. He simply accepted my keys with a wink. Jerk, I decided. Definitely a jerk. The first thing I did when I got in my car was make a phone call. The person on the other end picked up after the 2nd ring. Neither of us spoke. We breathed into the receiver, waiting for the other to initiate. "Hi," I said. "Hi." How could I ever have forgotten what Myra's true voice sounded like? Nothing in her tone suggested she was anything but safe, something I already knew, but actually confirming it let me relax for the first time in hours. "Brendan," she said, "why are you calling?" "I don't entirely know. Are you alright?" "I'm not sure." She was silent. I was too. "You should know. I know it doesn't matter, but I think you should know. I'm with somebody new," she said. "Okay. That's it?" "I think so. Yeah." Myra huffed out a laugh. "Why did you do this to me?" she snapped. "Nothing? Really? Brendan, you left after 3 years, no warning, and you never really even told me why. You haven't called once, you haven't texted, not even to tell me you're alright. I loved you, and you threw me away. Decent people don't do that." "It is." I sighed and leaned my head against the steering wheel. "Myra, I think there's something broken about me. I'm not. Something's always been broken about me, and I don't know how to fix it. I don't even know what it is, but I am sorry. That wasn't fair of me to leave like that. You deserve to hate me." A pause. "I could never hate you," she whispered. We hung up. Before either of us could start crying, I suspected. For a few minutes sitting there after the call, I considered quitting. I should have been afraid of Route 333. After everything I'd seen on it, after the bodies and the creatures that weren't quite human, it would make sense to leave. Anybody smarter than me probably would have quit. I couldn't though. I was afraid of the road, of the things that prowled behind the trees and waited in empty gas station shower stalls. I was afraid of the things that knew my scent and the thing that had slept next to me in bed. Of course I was. I was just afraid of the real world more. So I stayed. I kept driving. The faceless man has learned how to unlock doors from the inside. That's the only mention of him in the employee handbook, just that one sentence. Ominous enough that I made sure to close my windows and lock the doors every night before laying down on the cab sleeper. Generally, I'd leave the windows shut even if it was sweltering, but one night it got especially hot. There weren't many clouds in the sky. I'd already tossed and turned in my sweaty sheets for an hour before I decided to let in some air. Just a crack. I even wiggled my fingers in the open space to make sure that's all that could get through. When I tried to sleep this time, there was enough of a breeze to let me. The next time I woke, it was still night. The moon was covered by clouds. Clouds. I sat up. There was no reason to be afraid. I knew this. I hadn't broken any rules. The doors were locked and secured. Even so, I glanced first at the driver's side window and then the passenger. My entire existence jerked to a stop. It stared at me through the glass. The thing had no eyes, no ears, no hair, and no mouth. The only feature reminiscent of a living creature were two snake-like slits in the middle of the face. A nose of some sort. It faced me. It smelled. I could audibly hear the inhale even through the door, and the slits widened to holes the size of chestnuts. Light from the truck stop caught on each individual hair along the edge of those holes, almost like teeth. "Hello?" I tried, but no sound came out. I forced my throat to clear. "Do you need something? Are you the faceless man?" Right, because of course the thing with no ears or mouth is going to hear me and respond. By this point, I'd already experienced enough oddities of the road that I was content to just curl in the corner and wait until the thing left. That's exactly what I would have done if the faceless man hadn't reached a hand with 7 fingers up and tapped the glass. Quick clarification. When I say fingers, that's probably precisely what you envision. What I really mean is 7 bleach white protrusions, each a meter long, with dozens of joints and gnarled nails curling from their tips. I watched in horror as each of the fingers felt along the glass, found the lip, then snaked inwards. "Nope," I told it. "That's not happening. You're not doing that." I scrambled for the driver's seat in my boxers. The faceless man inhaled again and swiveled to follow my movement. "Out," I commanded, and twisted the key. The truck roared to life. The ivory fingers felt around, sliding past the unlock button and heading directly for the inner handle. "One last chance," I warned, even though it was entirely clear by now the thing wasn't able to hear me. When it predictably continued to not be able to hear me, I did what anybody would do in this situation. I rolled up the window. They flattened. Each cylindrical finger compressed where the glass closed into them, and the thing outside shuddered in pain. It yanked at them, trying to escape but unable. I gave it 2 more seconds, then cracked the window again. The faceless man yanked its fingers from my car, exhaled greenish globs of what I suspect was snot on my window, then skittered away. Needless to say, I got an early start that morning. I started talking with the other drivers at the truck yard before and after hauls. Slowly, I got to know some of them. Deidre was a divorced mum of 3. She hated she had to be away from her kids for such long stretches, but this job's pay was the only way she'd be able to send her oldest to college. Then there was Vikram. He immigrated with his family from India about 10 years ago. He tried taxiing in Chicago, but the pay was crap and the people were rude. He liked long hauling much better. Chris was more of a short hauler. He'd been on Route 333 for almost 15 years, longer than anybody else. And then there was the topic of lane locking. That's what we called it. Usually, Route 333 expands at an even pace, but eventually, without warning, it will one day explode in length. What took hours to drive the previous day might take weeks or even years now. It's like a fever breaking, Deidre explained to me. We're the virus. It takes a minute for the highway to get immune to us, but once it does, it happens all at once. There's a small stretch far out in the desert where it's common to see a neon orange flatbed heading the direction of the real world. Sometimes it's missing, but always, eventually, you see the flatbed again. "How long has he been going now?" I asked Chris one morning. 6, maybe 7 years? Al's a good guy. We'll pull over and talk occasionally. His time came quicker than most. "How much ground has Al covered?" Chris exhaled through his mouth and shook his head. "To you? A few miles, maybe? He'll never make it back, not in 100 years. He has a family, though. He refuses to quit. Some do, though. Some accept they're stuck, that it's not worth years of their life trying to get out, and find a new sort of life on Route 333. People like Tiff." The first time I met Tiff, I was getting coffee at 3 in the morning at the Wayside Diner. A middle-aged waitress delivered my coffee and waited there as I sipped it. "What the?" I looked up at her. This is actually palatable. Not exactly a compliment, but I'll take it. The woman slid in the booth across from me. You must be the new one. Brendan, right? Yeah? I'm Tiff, former employee turned waitress. I've heard of you. The others mention you. Still remember me, do they? Glad to hear I'm not entirely forgotten. She clasped her hands and muscles flexed along her fully tattooed arms. Tiff was exactly the type of tough woman you'd imagine would become a trucker, mixed with the sort of desperate, lonely friendliness only found at an old folks' home. Tell me, she said, what was your first reaction when you realised Route 333 wasn't a normal road? I don't think I've ever screamed at an interviewer before, she laughed. We talked for hours that night. She'd been offered a position on Route 333 for years before she actually accepted. She'd heard the rumours, she knew the sort of dangers it offered. When she finally took a position, it was only because her daughter got a brain tumour. Treatment was expensive. Her daughter didn't survive, but after that, Tiff kept hauling to stave off the loneliness. By the time we called it quits, the sun was already rising. I remember myself standing up, patting her shoulder and saying, I'll talk to Randall. We'll find some way for you to get out of here. Her face went dark. You shouldn't have said that. Not where the road can hear you. I slept a few hours, then decided to take a shower before leaving. The water was cold. I waited a few minutes for it to heat up, but when it didn't, I decided a cold shower likely wouldn't result in a grueling end. I finished that thing in a minute flat, then twisted the faucet to off. The water didn't stop. I tried twisting it the other way. The water only got stronger, and the drain in the floor had stopped working. Freezing water was building up in a puddle. Soon it overflowed the lip of the shower and onto the tile. I sighed, dressed, and went for the door. It was locked. I flipped the lock back and forth, that any way I attempted, the door wouldn't budge. I pounded at it until the cold touch of water licked my ankles. It was around then I realised I was in trouble. Hey! I screamed repeatedly, but nobody seemed to hear me. The water was at my knees now. I waded back to the shower and did my first truly stupid thing of this incident. I bound my towel around the shower head to stop the flow, which didn't work a bit. Then I slipped, tripped, and yanked the towel with me. The shower head tore off. The rate of water doubled. It was at my shoulders now. The water started pumping out brown and sludgy, too murky to see through, and my feet, things began to brush against them. Just my clothes, I told myself. But since when did my clothes have scales? There was only a foot of breathable air now, then 6 inches, then 1. I gasped a final breath as the slimy scaled things wrapped around my ankles and jerked me down. I flailed to escape, but where would I go? There was no more air. The entire room was full of glacier water. My vision started dimming. I felt my throat convulsing, begging me to breathe. The door flew open. Hundreds of gallons of water sloshed out of the bathing room into the hallway. It slammed me against the wall, but I gasped and struggled to my feet. When I stood, the hallway was dry. The shower room was dry. My dirty clothes were in a heap on the bench where I'd left them, totally dry. The only thing that was sopping wet was me. Tiff walked into the hallway a few seconds later with a garbage bag. She glanced from me in my sopping clothes to the open shower room door, then back to me. I told you shouldn't have said that. What just happened? I demanded. A threat. The road doesn't like to give up things it's claimed for its own. Don't try to help me escape, Brendan. With that, she shook her head, stepped over the puddle at my feet, and carried the trash down the hallway. It took me some time to calm down. Once I had, I was finally able to think. The way Tiff had told me not to help her had been calm, resigned. She'd given up years ago. She'd accepted this truck stop and its miniature diner was her life now, because the only alternative was something worse. The road had claimed her, it wanted her to stay, and it would hurt anyone who tried to take her. Except it couldn't hurt me. That realization filled me with hope. Route 333 couldn't hurt me because I had nothing I cared about. It could kill me, but so what? Why should that bother me? My life didn't matter to me, which meant I could defy the road all I wanted. Tiff might have given up, but I hadn't. I was going to get her out or die trying. I'd finally found something I hadn't had in years. I tried to get somebody else to do the work for me. Randall, I began, I get the impression you're about to say something I won't like. We need to rescue the stranded truckers. There has to be something we can do to get them out. Tiff doesn't even have a vehicle anymore. We're not in the business of handing free cars to non-employees. I'll buy it, I said. Maybe she can share with Al. This isn't funny. Of course it isn't funny. Randall slammed his hands on the desk and shot to his feet. I find nothing humorous in you messing with things you have no idea about. Maybe if you answered more of my questions, I would have more of an idea. You don't get to hand us an obscure employee handbook, then expect us to be good little soldier boys who follow your every order without ever giving us any explanations. Yes, actually, I do get to expect that. That's what the extremely generous salary is for. Oh, shove off. Money doesn't let you treat us like crap. It was his smirk that did it. Randall was fuming as much as me, but he still managed a satisfied smile as if to say, "You're stuck. You know it. You won't leave." And he was right, but that smirk. Find a new driver. I stormed out of the office. For any of you who fantasized about doing the exact same thing at your current job, I can assure you it feels every bit as good as you imagined, and more. I woke up at 1 a.m. to a screaming cell phone. It was so groggy I didn't even check the caller ID before picking up. Big mistake. "We need you to come in," Randall said. "Now." "It's the middle of the night. This is an emergency." I cussed him out. "If you'll remember, I quit less than 10 hours ago. You're not still going on about that, are you? Look, I apologize for whatever it is that made you so ticked earlier, alright? We good? Now stop throwing a fit and get yourself to the terminal. I'm not coming in." I hung up on him mid-sentence. Randall called again. I declined. He called again. I declined. He called 12 more times. 12. The 13th time, I finally picked back up. "Stop, please." Randall's tone was different now. The superior edge was gone. There was only desperation. "Brendan, this isn't a game. Come in tonight, right now, and I'll include a $10,000 bonus on your next paycheck." My finger hovered above the hang-up button. Not a bonus, a yearly raise. That's not how promotions work here. It wouldn't be a promotion. You would be rehiring me. I already quit, remember? Randall cussed me out. "Fine, you win. You'll get your rehiring bonus. Just come in. Student loans are really no joke." As soon as I reached the truck yard, Randall handed me a cup of coffee and a set of keys. The trailer's already hooked up. "You don't even need to take it far tonight. Just get it onto Route 333 and then you can sleep for a few hours." "Where am I going?" Randall exhaled and handed me a map, something he'd never done before. I hadn't even known maps of Route 333 existed. "But that's at least 5 days from here. That's a 10-day haul. I only brought one set of clothes." I threw some of mine in the cab, and yes, it has AC. "What's in the trailer?" I asked. He didn't even respond, just raised an eyebrow. That was fair, I supposed. I had agreed to take the job again, and I knew the rules. No peeking. Obviously, I'd asked the other drivers about what we were hauling. They were more than happy to offer up knowledge like best pullouts for a quick nap, what diners fried the best bacon, and how to avoid running into the things with zippers on their stomachs. Anytime I tried asking about the cargo, though, the mood changed. Their faces darkened. They sobered. "Sometimes not knowing a secret can drive you mad," Deidre confided in me once. "But sometimes it's knowing the secret that does it. In this job, you have to figure out which it is." I gave up asking what we were hauling. I let myself stop wondering. That night, though, driving through massive redwoods beneath a starry sky, I wasn't sure. The not knowing, the wondering, it was going to kill me. I was so distracted it took me almost by surprise when my rig sputtered, slowed, then stopped. By now I knew to expect this interruption. It happened every trip down Route 333. The exact location varied, but it always happened in the redwood section. I clicked start on the stopwatch I'd begun carrying. Somewhere around a minute 55, I stopped it. I already knew I'd been stalled for too long. Control your breath. Don't panic. Close your eyes. Hide. The footsteps began. They scurried around my rig. Occasionally things would tap or knock on the metal. Something yanked at the door handles. The truck stayed put. At one point, the entire truck shuddered as if a dozen bodies were slamming themselves against one side in an attempt to tip it. But the footsteps didn't get worse this time. Instead, the scurrying calmed down. Almost as if they were trying to quiet down enough to speak with me. "Give it to us." The voice wasn't a voice exactly. It was the rustle of leaves, the snap of branches underfoot, and the tinkle of wind chimes, all somehow combined in a way that formed words. We smell you, he who dwells on stone. Your odour has presented itself here once before, in our domain. We demand an audience. I kept still. The strange knot voice seemed to sigh. Speak with us, or we slash your tires. A pretty convincing argument. What do you want? I asked. The thing you carry in your moving device. Relinquish possession of it to us. Interesting proposition. Unfortunately, the cargo isn't really mine to begin with, so I'm not really in a position to hand anything over. I'm sure you understand. Relinquish it, and we will allow you open passage through our lands for the rest of your travels. Do not, and we will tear apart your machine. What is it? I asked. That is not an answer one life force may give another. So, you don't know. Of course we know, the thing said defensively. Really? Because it sounds like you're bluffing right now. We know, the thing calmed itself down. Relinquish your load and we will allow passage to all of your kind for the next generation. I remembered the man skewered on the hood of his truck. These things could kill us, and easily too, but I didn't know what was in my cargo, and I did know these things killed humans for merely looking at them. If they wanted my haul, it couldn't be for anything good. So I did the only thing I could think to do. I stalled. How about a clue? I asked. Surely you can give me a clue of what I'm hauling. It couldn't, it informed me, so I pushed. The thing got more and more frustrated. The footsteps grew restless again. They began circling my truck, looking for a way in. One of them scratched at the door. It slammed against the window, the sound of cracking glass. You are merely attempting to waste our time, the forest thing accused. That is the plan, yes. It slammed the glass again, more cracking. I could practically sense the creature drawing back, preparing for a third and final strike, about to break in. The engine roared to life. I whooped and scrambled for the front. Just before I uncovered my eyes, though, I realized the footsteps were still there, circling my truck. They hadn't left. I didn't consider. I just leapt into my seat, threw the car in drive, and slammed my foot on the gas, all without looking. The truck lurched forward. I forced my eyes to stay closed for 2, 4, 6 seconds before letting them spring open. A turn was coming up. I jerked the wheel and never slowed once. I'd escaped. It was only a couple hours later, when I was well into the desert and far enough to feel comfortable, that I finally pulled to the side of the road to survey the damage. The driver window had splinters running through it. There were dents along the skirt of the freight carrier, but it was otherwise intact. I circled to the back to make sure everything was still locked and secure. It was. Everything's fine. Get some sleep. You're fine. And then, as often happens just after the movie protagonist says, "It's all good, guys," something was crying. I pressed my ear to the metal of the freight. Sure enough, inside the container, faint but audible, was a little girl's sobs. "Hello?" I asked. "Do you need help?" The crying cut off. I waited another 10 minutes with my ears pressed to the container, but it never started again. It would have been easy to chalk it up to imagination. I was sleep deprived and in shock. But it wasn't imagination. I'd learned something, though what I now knew, I wasn't totally sure. Was the thing in the cargo bay a person? A creature? A child? Sometimes not knowing a secret can drive you mad. Sometimes knowing the secret is worse. What's in the trailer? Through the radio, Randall sighed at me, passive-aggressive as ever. We literally just had this conversation, he said, like 3 hours ago. That was before I heard something inside the cargo. You tell me what's in there right now, or I turn around and come back. That eager to visit the forest again, huh? Hang on, how do you know about my encounter? The other end of the radio fell silent. You set me up, I said. You knew they were going to go after me with this thing in the trunk. Don't be irrational. That's not what happened. Road dwellers just get more excited when there's live cargo. That's all. As long as you're cautious the rest of the trip, you'll be fine. But you knew I could die. We would never put you in real danger. I'm not worried for your safety, Brendan. You shouldn't be either. Something's crying in it, I said. It sounds like a little girl. Well, it isn't. Then tell me what it is. Stop asking. You haven't slept yet, Brendan. I haven't either. Go put your head on a pillow. I told him exactly where he could stick his head. He was right. After sleeping, I did feel better, and while that should have only annoyed me further, it was difficult to feel so, since I now felt infuriatingly great. So great, in fact, I didn't radio Randall back. I headed inside the truck stop to grab a cup of coffee from Tiff instead. "You're alright then," she told me. "Why wouldn't I be? The faceless man was prodding your rig for hours last night. I had a broom ready in case he tried to break anything. I've never seen him stay in one place like that." A chill crept through me. I never saw him. He wasn't at the windows. He was at the back of the freight. Looked like he was trying to get inside. They get more excited when there's live cargo. That's what Randall had said. I sipped my coffee. Back at my rig, I slipped a pancake under the slit in the trailer door. Something snatched it from the inside. "Can you hear me?" I whispered. No response. "Do you need help?" Nothing, except the near imperceptible shudder of the back door, almost as if something on the other side was pressing a hand to it, waiting to see what I'd decide. It was after about 6 hours of driving that I realised, with dawning, crippling horror, my irreversible mistake. I'd forgotten a battery pack for my iPod. Without it, I was stuck on a 10-day drive without any podcasts, books, or self-chosen music. A tragedy. I'd stayed away from the radio before that point. A few of the stations were in fact dangerous. They'd put you in a trance or whisper secrets you wished you could unhear. But I'd never been desperate enough to take the risk, until my iPod died. I flipped past a few country stations, not my thing. Then I discovered something odd, a K-pop channel. I couldn't ever remember Korean music playing on a car radio out in the middle of nowhere like this, and the songs that came on, I didn't recognize a single one. They sounded like the groups I listened to, but with songs I was positive didn't exist. And you know what? I started getting into it. An entire playlist of music I loved that didn't exist in the real world. Maybe next time I'd bring a tape recorder and post this stuff online. I even started singing along. Time flew by. I didn't notice the flashing blue and white lights until the sirens came on. Randall? Nobody responded. The police car pulled in behind me. "Randall," I tried again. "Sorry," came a voice from the handheld radio. A woman. Gloria. I was out of the room. "Randall's not actually here. He left a note. It says, 'Tell Brendan if he wants to continue arguing, tell him one of the following responses.'" The rest is quite rude, to be honest. "I'm not trying to argue," I said. "I just got pulled over." There was silence. The silence of a doctor deciding how to word that it's terminal and there's nothing I can do. "How bad were you speeding?" Gloria asked. "That can make a big difference." "Not at all. I was on cruise. I've read that section in the employee handbook." "Wait, you haven't read all the employee handbook yet?" "Look, the important thing is he pulled me over. What do I do?" A car door slammed. The highway patrol officer approached. "The reason makes a difference," Gloria pushed. "My cargo. That's got to be why. I'm the one on the long-haul trip with the special cargo." A longer silence. "Let me call Randall." The radio went dead. A knock sounded on my door. "Sir," a husky voice said from outside. I held my breath and popped the door. He had a tag and a uniform. He rested a hand on his hip. The mustached man was just like every other officer that had ever pulled me over, save one singular difference. His head was bent entirely back. It was as if somebody with impossible strength had grabbed his hair and yanked backwards and down. The neck was snapped and contorted. An empty tube jutted up from a break in the twisted skin, his throat. His entire face was upside down, and he stood backwards to face me. Hi, I said. "Do you mind telling me what's in your trailer?" "Funny story, not actually sure. Please remove yourself from the vehicle and open the back of the truck." "Sorry, why did you pull me over?" The officer sighed as if to say, kids these days. A puff of red mist spurted from his severed throat blowhole. "Sir, you are speaking to an officer of the law. I will be investigating your vehicle. You will extricate yourself this instant or face the full wrath of the law." It was like a child pretending at the lines a real police might say. That thought calmed me. Play acting. Fine. Two could dance to this tune. "Your warrant?" I asked. "As an officer of the law, you're clearly well aware you need one to search private property." "Yes, that's correct. I do know that. I'll retrieve mine now." He walked backwards toward his car, by which I mean he walked forwards, with his upside-down eyes blinking at me. Hello, I called into my handheld. Could really use some advice right now. Nothing. If not, I'm planning to try and outrun him. Brendan, do not try to outdrive highway patrol. I repeat, do not attempt to chase. You will lose. Gloria's voice came through strong and clear. Finally. I spoke to Randall, she continued. He said if you really weren't speeding, there is one thing you could try. Randall says you can try videotaping him with your phone. Cops hate that. The fear pulsing through me abated. The pounding distress settled. A cold understanding took over. Hey Gloria, put Randall through to me. Eventually his voice came through, muffled and tinny. Brendan, he said. Answer honestly this time. Did you know this hall might kill me? I did. Is there a chance I survive if I use my phone? As soon as the cop is gone, drive like there's no tomorrow. That wasn't my question. I asked if there's a chance I survive. There is. And if I refuse this plan, don't. His voice was barely audible. I'm sorry. I really am sorry we put you in this position, but you cannot let Highway Patrol get a hold of your cargo. None of the sentient road dwellers can. That isn't an option. Too much is at stake. This is bigger than you. I nodded. If I risk breaking this rule, I have one condition. It isn't negotiable. It's a yes or no. I will only do this if you agree. That when I get back, you will explain to me what Route 333 is. You will tell me what I'm hauling and why it's so important. A pause. Yes. There was a knock on the door. The officer was back. I set the radio down, then carefully, resigned, pulled my phone from the passenger cubby and powered it on. I could explain in detail what happened next, but I won't. To me, the whole thing was a dream. It worked. Of course it did. Randall knew it would more than he could let on, but none of that mattered now. I may have survived Highway Patrol, but I wouldn't survive this next part. I watched as the black and white cruiser screamed down the highway. Smaller, smaller, gone. I set my phone in the drink holder without bothering to power it off. What I did no longer mattered. I waited, waited, waited. A line of clouds appeared over the horizon line, dark and hostile. They rolled in at an unnatural speed. Outside my windows, the wind picked up. Dust devils rose up across the desert. My end was here. Randall never would have agreed to my one condition if he thought I'd survive. I knew almost nothing about him, but I knew that much. That was the only reason I'd made our deal, to see his response. Never, for any reason, would he or the rest of management tell me the truth about the road. He needed me to avoid Highway Patrol. He couldn't allow any of the living things on Route 333 to get to my cargo. But whatever was coming for me now was in a different category. It wasn't alive. It was deadly though. Enough that he knew he wouldn't have to uphold his end of our bargain. I inhaled. I exhaled. Clouds rushed in above me and thick drops of rust-coloured liquid slid down my windshield. Blood. The end. Even now, I wasn't nervous. That's part 1. Part 2 tomorrow. See you then.